Titanic wasn't just a ship, it was a floating prison, holding not just people, but secrets. That night, the ocean didn't just swallow a vessel. It opened the door to an ancient world, where time stood still and shadows came alive. Shadows that had never truly died. Every scream, every drowning breath awakened another curse. Titanic didn't sink. It was taken. Do you know, the Titanic wasn't just a ship. It was a dream, forged in steel, driven by arrogance. People say the Titanic sank because it hit an iceberg. But the real story was never above the sea. It was hidden beneath the water, and still is. In 1912, when the Titanic began its maiden voyage, newspapers called it the unsinkable ship. But no one knew that a curse was buried deep within that unsinkable ship. Did you know there was a box inside one of Titanic's cabins that no one ever opened? And when the ship sank, something else went down with that box. A passenger, whose name was never on any manifest, secretly hid that box. And from that box, something may have emerged, something not of this world. The ship's captain never officially declared that he saw a shadow over the sea that night. It wasn't an iceberg, it was something else. Something alive, something ancient. When panic first broke out in Titanic's engine room, they said it was a wiring issue. But the engineers claimed the machines were stopping on their own, as if someone or something had taken control. An old lady, whom everyone called the Silent Widow, used to say, "This ship makes everyone its own," and then devours them. That night, when Titanic sank, people screamed, cried, disappeared, but from one cabin, only silence. That cabin still rests sealed on the ocean floor, as if someone locked it from inside. A young boy named William kept writing in his diary, "I see a ghost every day. He tells me the Titanic never reaches shore." A woman, Elizabeth, used to go to the deck every night and talk to the sea. She once said, "This ship isn't mine. It belongs to someone else. I only hid it." A crew member wrote in his journal, "We're under the control of another force. This voyage wasn't made by man." A strange stone, called the Odin stone, was secretly brought aboard. People say a spirit was trapped inside it, and the sea only ever wanted that. In a hypnosis session, a survivor said, "I saw its face. It wasn't human. Its eyes were burning, and it told me I would drown too." Was the Titanic just a ship? Or was it a seal, and breaking it unleashed the ocean's ancient wrath? When the ship went under, one final sound was heard. We'll meet again on the other shore. Even today, whenever something massive sinks in the ocean, some people say, "The Titanic is calling again." You're saying, "You saw him sinking?" No. I saw him descending into the sea, as if he was answering a call. Was he the same boy who had been silent since day one? Yes. He held an old photograph of another ship. That ship wasn't the Titanic, but it had the same symbol. A red circle, with an eye in the center. I see that eye in my dreams. Me too. It used to flicker every time we looked toward the sea. Did you ever see that cabin no one ever went near? Yes. It had a lock on the door, but no one had the key. And when Titanic's first alarm rang, that cabin door would open slightly, on its own. I'm an engineer. I know. Beneath that cabin there was an old shaft, one not mentioned in any blueprint. A shaft. Where did it lead? Directly below the ship, to another layer, like another hull, something that had been hidden. Another Titanic? Or maybe a part that was meant to be kept from mankind? Did you ever hear that sound after midnight? That noise that seemed like it came from an old engine, but everything in the engine room would be shut down? Yes, that sound could only be heard when someone was alone. And the screaming. Whose voice was that? Elizabeth used to say it was her mother, who had drowned 30 years ago with another ship. but the Titanic was built just recently. So, what ship was she on? Did you ever see that brass compass? The one that always pointed east instead of north? Yes. When I held it, I felt like the ship was turning, but it wasn't actually moving. One day, the compass broke on its own, and that very day, the weather changed. The sea turned red. It didn't feel like water, more like some other element. People said it was the cursed blood sea, and Titanic was the offering made to it. Do you know what Captain Smith wrote in his private logbook? I refused this voyage, but someone forced me. Who? That boy, the one who wasn't on any list, but was seen everywhere. Did you ever see him walk on water? I'm not lying. He literally walked on the sea, and his reflection was different. Was he afraid of your eyes? No, he didn't care. Like he already knew what we were all thinking. I entered a cabin once that had a mirror, and I wasn't in it. You had no reflection? No. But someone else stood behind me, the lights on the Titanic. They started blinking after a while, like Morse code. I decoded it. The message was, "You will not return." Then one day, the bell rang, the one that only rings in emergencies. But no one in the control room had rung it. That bell-S sound echoed through the entire ship, and only those could hear it who had dreamt of the Titanic sinking. And when we asked them, they said, "We've already sunk." So, are we even alive? Or is the Titanic trapped in a time loop? A curse that never ends. Did you know there was a corridor in Titanic S lower deck that wasn't marked on any map? Every morning at exactly 3:07 a.m., a bell would ring there, but no one ever activated the bell system. A steward once reported seeing a child, completely drenched in white clothes, standing in the same spot every day, and in his eyes there was only water. In second-class cabin 273B, on the night of April 14th, people heard a voice say, "Time's up." When the crew checked, the cabin was empty. How long had it been empty? Since the very first day. An artist named Alan Mark sketched the ship's deck. In the sketch, Titanic was completely submerged, and he drew this a day before the journey even began. A woman named Clara claimed she saw her husband in two places on the ship, once in the dining hall, once in the engine room. But he never boarded the ship. He had died the day before. A fireman reported that someone grabbed his hand in the boiler room, but when he turned to look, it was a burned spirit, completely blackened, yet alive. In the captain's quarters, they found an old diary, written by someone named Captain Fenton. But no one named Fenton was ever posted to Titanic, not during its design, not during its voyage. A survivor said that at 1:24 a.m. the ship changed course, but the controls were no longer in human hands. The radio officer tried to send out an SOS signal, but the signal came back. "Already taken. You're not alone." A cleaner said they saw a man in a cabin holding a compass. He kept saying, "Time has twisted. We're going back to where we came from." An old trunk was found in the Titanic's cargo hold. Inside were mummified fingers. They were covered in runic symbols, linked to Norse black magic. A child passenger named Sophia made a drawing, a giant hand pulling the ship downward. Beneath it, she had written, "It's calling me." One logbook entry read, "There's something in the water, always beneath us. Never try to find it." An engine operator said, "Every time I turn the levers, someone breathes near my neck." One passenger looked in his cabin mirror and didn't see himself. He kept screaming, "I've disappeared. I've become part of the ship." There came a moment when every clock on Titanic stopped, all at the same time, 2:19 a.m. And at that exact moment, a little girl whispered, "Now the Titanic has died. Now it has forgotten us." Was Titanic's journey ever meant to reach the sea? Or was it all just an invitation to step into another world? Do you think the Titanic just sank? No, it took something with it. Something that never came back. When divers first discovered the wreck of the Titanic in 1985, they found one cabin door completely shut, the entire cabin intact. But everything else was shattered. Only that cabin seemed frozen in time. One diver reported that when he tried to approach the cabin, his oxygen mask fogged up. The camera shut down. He only felt one thing, as if something inside was calling to him. And then he heard a whisper in his ear. "You've returned?" In one of the ship's documents, a name appeared. Elias Granger. But there was no such passenger in the official Titanic records. When they researched the name, they found out he was an occultist who had been burned alive at sea in 1886. And his last words were, "I will return with a mirror." Was the Titanic that mirror? One crew member, known as Jonathan the Quiet, had written in his logbook, "At 3 a.m., I met a passenger. He didn't have a ticket, but he said he had been waiting for this ship for 50 years. There was a hidden chamber in the Titanic, not shown in any blueprints. Only a few engineers knew it existed, and that it had never been opened. One day, black liquid began to leak from that area into the engine room. The engineers said it wasn't TE oil. It was something else, like darkness pulled from the depths of the earth. A woman of Irish origin once said, 'This ship is cursed. I've seen a design like this before, in ancient Irish mythology, where a ship was built for the god of the sea.' One night in one of Titanic's mirrors, no one could see their own reflection. Instead, someone else was standing in the glass, even though there was only one person in the room. That person later wrote in his diary, 'He was watching me, as if I was a guest in his home.' One lifeboat was numbered 13, and no one ever boarded it. When the rescue ship recovered it, they found a small bell inside, and the bell was bleeding. A child passenger, Sarah, told her mother, 'Mommy, the ship is going straight up, but not into the water, into the darkness.' One rescued crew member later took his own life. In his suicide note, he wrote, 'I saw the eye, the one that opened on the Titanic.' An old sailor once said, 'Titanic wasn't built in any shipyard. It was born inside the dream of an ancient sea god.' Every night a waiter served a plate at an empty table, and every morning the plate would be empty. But no one had ever sat at that table. In Titanic's library there was a book, with no language, no text, only symbols, and at night they would glow. A female passenger wrote in her journal, 'While I was asleep, I dreamed the ship took flight, but beneath it there was no ocean, only darkness.' A radio officer once received an unknown signal. 'The door of time has opened. You've all stepped inside.' A mechanical engineer saw a face inside a machine, but it wasn't human. He never slept again till the end, haunted by that face. A nurse said, 'There was a patient who repeated one sentence every single day. He's coming, from the water, always has, only for Titanic.' In an artist's sketch pad, some pages drew themselves. They showed a ship suspended upside down in the sky, and beneath it was written, 'This is not Titanic. This is its duplicate.' One crew member saw blood dripping from Titanic's anchor, but the anchor had never touched the water. If a clock begins to breathe, know this: on Titanic, even time is alive. There was a girl. Her name wasn't Rose, but she called herself Rose. She would scream, 'I've drowned twice. Both times Titanic called me.' A priest kept praying on Titanic, but the Bible he held had every verse blacked out, replaced by a single new line. 'This is the Messiah of the sea.' On an old engine panel, someone had written in blood, 'They raised it. Now it has risen.' Every night, from a manhole came the sound of laughter. Not a child's, not a woman's, just empty laughter. A scientist who studied Titanic's structure once said, 'Its design wasn't based on any mathematical formula. It was the diagram of a dark ritual.' A survivor said, 'That iceberg didn't come to destroy the ship. It came to take it back.' A slip of paper was found under a crew member's bed. 'You can't Fight the sea, you are inside it. On Titanic's bow, someone had hidden a small idol of a goddess who ruled over darkness. A steward said, when they started handing out life jackets, one jacket slipped from his hands. Inside were bones, centuries old. A woman aboard once said, "My mother told me, this ship rises every 100 years, always with new people aboard." And as the ship sank, a small voice whispered, "You didn't collide with the sea. You collided with the darkness within yourself. You won't understand. Titanic's journey wasn't just about the people. Something else boarded with it. There was a cabin from which cold air constantly blew, even though the heater was running at full power." Elizabeth wrote in her diary, "He came again. He sat by my bedside and said, 'I will be your companion on this journey.'" One night, William saw a man sneaking near the boiler room, but when he followed him, the man vanished into thin air. Some crew members said they saw someone walking off the deck stepping into the sea, but there was no splash. One night, a little girl, Lucy, screamed, "Mommy, that uncle is calling me. He has no face." The doctor wrote in his report, "Patients are hallucinating. One said the ship is breathing." An engineer noted, "The wires are intact, but the lights keep turning off, like a shadow is passing through." A letter was found left outside Elizabeth's room. "The time has come. Open the gate." A musician said, "When I play the violin, I hear another melody joining in, but there's no one behind me." A night watchman saw a man in an old uniform standing in the stairwell, but he had no eyes. A woman wrapped in a white sheet was seen walking on the deck, but she passed through people without touching anyone. The captain wrote in a private log, "Every night I hear a voice. It says, 'Repay your debt.'" When a steward was ordered to prepare the lifeboats, he said, "The ship can't be left behind. I'm waiting for it." In one cabin, a message was found written on the wall. "In these waters, we are only guests. The true owner has returned." A sealed box, never opened, made strange sounds every night. Once a steward heard a voice from within. It said, "I am free now." Some shared tales. This ship was built in response to a demand. It was a bargain, and now the price is being paid. As the night deepened, smiles faded from every face. Titanic was no longer just a voyage. It had become an invitation for something else. Do you remember William? He wrote in his diary that every night he heard the sound of water outside his cabin. But Titanic was in the middle of the ocean. What water was he hearing? One night, Elizabeth screamed, "He's here!" When everyone asked who, she said, "The one who drowned a city before this." An engineer wrote somewhere, "In the boiler room, the temperature doesn't rise according to science. It follows something else, like someone is watching." A boy named Thomas drew a sketch inside his cabin, but it wasn't Titanic. It was an old, burning ship with faceless people screaming. Another passenger, Miss Clara, began saying she saw a city under the sea in her dreams, where people lived, without breathing. During the days when Titanic entered the Atlantic, some birds kept circling the ship, but they weren't migratory birds. They came from another direction. One day, a crew member said, "I won't board this ship." When asked why, he replied, "Something is breathing inside it, and it's not human." Passengers in the third-class cabins claimed that exactly at 3 a.m., someone would scratch their doors, and when they opened them, the hallway was empty. Another story tells of an old sailor seen near the lifeboats, but his name wasn't on any crew list. He said, "I've been on this ship before, when it sank the first time." A woman claimed she saw a man wrapped in old clothing. He never spoke, just stared. When she told an officer, he replied, "That man died in 1888. In one cabin, people captured a voice, without any recording device. The voice said, 'We have returned.'" As Titanic began approaching the iceberg, a crew member noticed there was no mist around the iceberg. But in front of the Titanic, there was a black fog. It wasn't like smoke, it was like a breath. Another theory says Titanic's designer, Thomas Andrews, had a hidden room built into the ship. He once said, "If everything ends, this room will survive." Did you know that one of Titanic's lifeboats was never recovered? When it was eventually found, inside was only a tiny bone carving, engraved with the words, "Return what you took." A crew member claimed he saw another Titanic. Same design, same size, but it was underwater, and inside were people. But they were all in darkness. Some say that before Titanic sank, not just water, but time itself stopped. The clocks froze. It was as if time had abandoned the ship. One passenger said, "I went to the Marconi room, but there was no signal, just a faint scream, like someone shouting through the wires." And finally, a woman named Lady Margaret once wrote a riddle. After 3 days, 5 secrets will be revealed. At that time, Titanic will show its true form.